creating wealth, freedom, and security using real estate investing. This is Get Real Wealthy.
We're going to talk about taking advantage of a deflationary cycle in real estate. As real estate interest rates have taken a hard turn upwards over the last 12 months, we've seen real estate prices drop in a number of areas across Canada and the US. But what is deflation? Sometimes this is a hard concept to consider. Over time, we see food, housing, fuel, and entertainment expenses increase. And this is what we see as the consumer price inflation. It affects our daily lives and how we plan for the future. Deflation is the opposite. This is where we see prices go down. Most people would see falling prices as a good thing, as you are able to buy more goods and services and they are decreasing in price, which has the effect of making you feel a lot wealthier. Falling prices over time have increased the standard of living because we have a greater ability to purchase goods. But it is also obvious that a sustained period of deflation can be harmful for the economy even more than an inflationary period. Deflation has its own unique pains as well as opportunities. Deflation could cause people to postpone or even avoid intended purposes because prices may be lower in the future. For example, if you are looking to purchase a house and you believe that the house would be 10% cheaper in a year's time, you would postpone its purchase in order to take advantage of that price discount. From a real estate owner's perspective, if you were in a position where you needed to sell in a persistent falling price environment, you would see a loss in equity that more than you'd ever had before. And that's not something that you want to see in that type of market. The reason is that you actually feel poorer. If you have less equity and you have less equity that you had in your house from before, when you go to make other purchases, you may not make those purchases because you're feeling poorer. That deflationary environment takes time to work its way through the economy. So even when we see prices decrease, those other changes may take 6 to 8 months to appear in the market. So even though we have prices that may deflate, the actual wealth or poor effect that you see in the market doesn't happen for 6 to 8 months later. Currency supply is important to your understanding of deflation and inflation. Where we are expanding our currency supply, we see increases in prices. When we are shrinking the currency, we see decreases in prices and deflation. Let's say the local bank lends you $800,000 for your mortgage. That $800,000 may have been in the bank's reserves and access to those reserves, but it wasn't in the broad economy. That $800,000 now went to the seller, and those funds are now part of the broader economy. This is your simplified example of the increase in supply. There are other ways that this occurs. Now, if the government is doing quantitative tightening or restricting the reserves of the bank, there are less funds available to lend. By increasing the rates of interest on funds, it also adds a restriction because of the serviceability of that debt. So who wins and who loses with deflation? You may think that deflation is bad for everyone, but there are also winners. Inflation is good for borrowers because loans are paid back with cheaper devalued dollars in the future. In an economy that suffers from deflation, borrowers lose out because they are paying back money down the road that becomes more expensive. In addition, property values are falling too. You may not want to borrow funds in an economy where asset prices are deflating because you have a double-edged sword. There is no economy where you would want to see your asset prices deflate year after year after year, as there would be no point in owning those assets at all. As a real estate investor, one of your costs that you must consider are interest rates. During a deflationary period, you may be able to pick up properties at a discounted price compared to just a year before, but you must be able to service the debt with the interest rates that are available at the time. If you're able to service those debts with the mortgage rate for a longer period of time and maintain a cash flow positive position, you would be best to pick up as many of those property assets as you can. For example, if you're to put a 5-year term mortgage on a rental property that is cash flow positive today, and your plan was to hold that asset for at least 5 years, you could put a 5-year mortgage on that property and therefore be able to maintain that cash flow positive position. Falling asset prices are a precursor to a period of deflation as spending falls and demand in the economy goes down. This drive down in demand puts a downward pressure on prices. There is a danger that deflation could feed on itself and spiral out of control. Deflation punishes all borrowers, and remember, the federal government is the biggest borrower in the country through its national debt. And there's been some interesting changes that have happened in the national debt that hasn't happened over the last 80 years or since it's been in existence. The cost of that debt with the interest rate increases has put the central bank in a negative position. And that is something very interesting, something that you may want to consider if you're going to continue to take on debt. Do you think the government is going to want to be in that negative position over a longer period of time? Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you like this type of episode, please let me know, and we'll see you on the next episode of Get Real Wealthy.
Make sure to check out getrealwealthy.com.
Until next time, I'm Quentin D'Souza. Get out there and take action. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for information purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider an investment course of action. For more information, go to getrealwealthy.com.